But it won't.
Good question.
It won't be double the line.
No. I understand that. I understand that.
Diminishing return for each symptoms checker, because we purposely started with the ones that got the most usage.
I think the last one that's going on is nuclear emergency. To illustrate the point.
Thank you.
I may regret saying that.
Tim.
Well, a couple of questions really. One, the numbers shown are the numbers of people starting to use symptom checkers. I wonder whether the reason that the final click-through is a smaller percentage is because actually relatively few patients get there because it's too complicated, and therefore I wonder what we know about the complexity of it and whether we've pitched that correct. At the same time as observing that, I think enlisting the members and so on to do the card sorting is brilliant. Yeah. That should be praised.
So that's a question, Renette. So is the lower than predicted rate of callback reflect that people don't get all the way to the end of the tool? Do we know of the people who start how many people complete?
We do know that. I don't know that just off the top of my head. I can look and report back to the board next month if you wish. But what we also have had is quite an unsophisticated methodology of picking up the clicks, if you like. And so one of the other pieces of strategic investment that we're making is in a much better suite of usage analysis tools than what we've had before, so that we can see where somebody completes a interaction, and also more importantly where they stop. Because we know that each health and symptoms checker gets about 1.26 tries. So I think what happens is patients get to an answer that they weren't expecting, and so they go back a step and start again. And so therefore there is a patient expectation, particularly where they get the big flashing screen that says phone 999, that they then go back and try again, because that wasn't what they were expecting. But what we haven't had is the analytics in order to allow us to follow those journeys and to make the changes where we need them to be. Okay. So, but in the future that will be something that we will have greater sophistication on. So I think there is some truth in it's complicated, therefore you don't get to the end. But what the 4% was of the people that get to those dispositions, what proportion comes back? Yeah. So of the people that get an endpoint disposition, what proportion actually ends up with a click to callback?
Okay, good. So we're measuring the right thing. I would suggest, Renette, that we don't need to come back to the board with any further analysis at the moment, but we will ask you for more if we need them, or individuals can come back to you and ask you for what they want. Okay, good. Ruth was the next one.
Just 3 points. One around the project management and project planning. When we came up with the project plan, we didn't, of course, know about 111 and we didn't know about patient decision aids. And that's not an excuse. It's just to say that what we haven't got right is how we look at when new things come on stream, how we look at the impact of those things on the resources that we need, because the same resources in multi-channel user testing and clinical content team. So one of the things that we've got planned are 2 workshops in January and February to look at lessons learned, with no doubt of which resources will be a big issue. And then we can link that into the work that Liz is doing around project management, and also the work that my team are doing around development of new services and how we ensure we've got the resources right. The final thing to say is we are now, of course, building in web into the development of our value proposition. So in terms of measuring the value we add, that now picks up on web usage, and I think that some of these questions will also come out when we start to look at the value of web as part of our value proposition, and we will need to get into this data a bit more.
Thanks, Ruth. Louisa, and then I'm going to finish it off.
I just wondered, what's the timescale for that, Ruth, for being able to develop a value proposition around that web usage?
Well, it's in its infancy. We just need to refine the methodology. So I think we've got a piece of work to do to review the methodology, probably in the first 2 months of the year, i.e. January and February. So I'd hope that by April we would have a better handle on the value from the web as well as the phone.
Okay, Nick, you're going to...
Just very quickly, so what you have here is not quite an end-of-term report, but the report on what we've done. It's an important activity and we're taking it forward. I would like to record the fact that I think the team working on this have worked extremely hard. They've felt my keen interest in completion dates. And may have drawn the wrong conclusion from that actually I thought the work that they were doing was somehow substandard or that they weren't pulling their weight. So I just wanted to say that's, although I've never said that, it's not the case. I'm simply keen to get the end result.
Good, thank you. Noted. Shall we then just keep going a little bit longer before we take a break? The next thing on the agenda is the integrated risk management policy. I'm not quite sure why we would call that strategy. That feels to me like governance and compliance, really. So let's crunch through our governance and compliance section and then take a 5-minute break before we talk about stakeholder engagement. So, Liz, you're going to talk to us briefly about the risk management policy, or not, as you choose.
Yeah, just to say that the amended risk management policy went to the audit committee on the 6th of December and was supported, similar to the board assurance framework, in that some areas for development were picked up by internal audit, and so this is a response which fits directly with the board assurance framework.
Fine. Peter.
I think the only thing I would want to say is we'll have to have a seminar on this sooner rather than later.
Okay.
And I don't know, it's for programming in, that's really why I mentioned it.
Fine.
In order that the board members are thoroughly aware of it. Yes.
For the rest of the organisation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so can we put that on the action log, please, and programme in a time to do that?
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Nick, governance report.
Simply identifying, you mean flicking through my papers?
Meeting
yeah,
dates.
the meeting dates for the annual general meeting, which was not in the usual pattern, and has caught us out, and we're now asking for the board's agreement to put it at the end of the month as opposed to the middle of the month.
Okay, so we'll take that as read.
Thank you.
Thank you. General Finance Committee oral report.
Thank you. Very quickly, we had our meeting on the 29th of November. We made the same observations as Peter's just been made about the control that we seem to have over the finances right now. We looked at the ICT expenditure roadmap, and we're going to be looking at that again in January. And I think that's really important that we start looking, for the 5-year period rather than just in front of ourselves, and that was very useful. We also spent a lot of time talking about bids, and this is in the aftermath of Birmingham Home Health and the bid for West Berkshire, and there's a new bid process being looked at, and that's going to come back to the Trust Board in March. I think that's really important that the Board actually looks at the bid process rather than the Finance Committee. I remember we were very interested, and I think we gave some good input. But I think that's a Board issue rather than just a Finance Committee issue. And finally, we've started having a look at the process that's going to give us our 5-year integrated business plan and budget. Early stages, but obviously as we work towards Foundation Trust, assuming everything happens the way we think it's going to, that's going to be increasingly important.
Okay, thank you, Tim. You're certainly right. Okay, Peter, I think there is an item from your audit committee that's going to come to the private part of the board. Is there anything you want to say now in public session about the audit committee of the 6th of December?
No. We've covered all main points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And there was a clinical governance committee on the 9th. Sue?
Yes. We had at the meeting our quarterly clinical governance report, and there was some lengthy discussion around 2 of the KPIs that are included in the KPI dashboard. The first one being training, which we have asked for clarification on. There is a red KPI around percentage of staff completing mandatory clinical training, which caused us some concern. It appears that there are definitions and what is included and what isn't included. And we took some assurance from the discussion, but we have asked that that is brought back to the committee in March for clarity. And the second KPI was around the number of expert call reviews that are being undertaken. Very, very important quality and patient safety indicator, and we are not achieving the 1% of all calls to be covered by an expert call review, and we've asked that further resources are put into that so that that KPI comes out of the red.
Okay, thank you.
There were obviously the 1-1 service. We're very interested in it from a clinical governance perspective. It's clearly just started, but we have asked for a report on clinical governance issues to the next meeting around the 1-1 service, the pilots that are running at the moment. We had assurance that we have now undertaken a mid-year compliance review for the Care Quality Commission's registration, and that has come back as clear. Obviously, it's an ongoing commitment now to comply with CQC registration, but the committee took comfort from that review. We had a report to the committee about an update on the Francis report recommendations. If you recall, to the board there's been a report setting out a whole series of initiatives that we were going to undertake to ensure that we have taken the Francis report lessons into account, and we received an update on progress against that. One of the key areas is making sure that, if you recall the Francis report, there's a lot of emphasis on looking at mortality statistics. Obviously we're not an acute trust, so we have been looking at alternative ways of engaging with those sort of mortality statistics, and therefore at the committee we had a review of every patient death that had occurred if they had had any contact with the service over a 6-month period, and that was quite important, I think, in terms of just raising awareness amongst the Clinical Governance Committee and subsequently the board around that sort of mortality statistic. That will come to the board in the future. We had an annual report on safeguarding adults. Lots of discussion, key areas to bring to the board's attention, and the second report on safeguarding children, which updated the committee on preliminary findings from the Munro report. Again, nothing really to report to the board. And I think that was it.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, are there any questions for... There are. Louisa, then Trevor.
Just a quick one. And in the Ross report, there's also quite a lot of store put on complaints and
Yes.
non-accepting complaints, and that's happening.
It is. In a way that looking at the patient death was the start of patient death summary was part of that. And then obviously more detail around the IFNRs and then into complaints. So there's a sort of end-to-end process that we're reviewing with the committee. But if you have any specific questions, then we can...
I just wondered if they will stay within the Clinical Governance Committee, whether the board will have see any of those complaints generally.
In terms of specifics on complaints, or just the general background around the types of complaints that we have?
Well,
numbers.
I suggest, I mean, it seems to me that that's a really good question, and we might want to pick that up after we've had our break, when we talk about how the board engages with patient experience, because it conveys a very specific, very particular, and very potentially very insightful avenue for that. So let's come back to that. Okay. Trevor?
It's a point of governance I think I want to raise. It's very useful to get oral reports from very recent committees, but could I have confirmation that the formal minutes will still come here,
Yes.
even though we've had the oral reports?
Yes.
Absolutely. Good. Okay, thank you everyone then.